All right. Well, I'm gonna do a quick live here on Sportswire Radio on YouTube. If you were on Facebook, I'm probably not gonna see you, but just want to do something real quick. Maybe a little brief recap on a couple different things here. Joined by Rob Maraska, might be joined by somebody else. Rob, how you doing?
Hey, Tom, sorry about that Facebook mess up there. It's
Yeah,
like
Facebook just
ridiculous.
won't. Unfortunately, I tried. Figured I'd do a Facebook Live. Maybe that would work, but definitely doesn't work. And that's kind of where we left off here. Maybe we'll get a person or two to join, but unfortunately, that's kind of how it's going to go. It seems like Facebook, definitely doesn't like me. But obviously, a lot of people don't like the New York Mets right now. Mets are definitely in a big hole, and looks like it could be here where the season is heading south, and it could be a long season now for the New York Metropolitans.
It's heading south fast. And, if this continues, it's going to be a long, long season and a season of disappointment. It's ridiculous. 7 games in a row, and they just look horrible. I mean, now they're scoring runs, but the pitching, just forget about it. I mean, you lose 2 series, okay? And the Braves, what a disaster. You have a lead in all those games, and then you just blow every game. The bullpen is really bad right now. And then to top it off, you go into Pittsburgh and you lose tonight. And, even though they scored 5 runs in the ninth inning, they still got beat. They got their
Yeah, I
butt.
mean, that's window dressing. It was 14-2, and it really doesn't show what the score really ended up to be. And Anthony Finkel is here from Waterbury, Connecticut. Now I'm trying to think. Waterbury, Connecticut. That's further up, kind of near Darien, right? If I'm not mistaken, Waterbury's near Darien, Connecticut. And what are you doing in Waterbury, Connecticut? You own another house there? Are you in a vacation home in Waterbury, Connecticut? At least you're away from the smoke in New York, right? And yeah, listen, Mets. Definitely. I don't know what to say really much on the team. I didn't even really watch much of the game. I was listening to some of it on the radio. But I see that they also DFA'd an old friend who we interviewed on Sportswire in the past, Steven Nagosic. So the Mets are really almost run out of options. The other news here of note, Pete Alonso, obviously the Mets' biggest player, is not going to be with the team for a little while. And obviously talk about that here for those that may be watching and listening out there.
Yeah, that's a big blow. I mean, probably 3 to 4 weeks without Alonso, and then when he gets back, what happens then. It takes a while to get back into the swing of things. He was on you know, a home run record pace, and then of course he gets injured. You just got to look at the Mets, and it's just typical Mets. Cohen spends all this money, and the Mets just go. The same stuff happens all the time. All right, they can't win against the Braves. It's got to be in their heads. I don't know. It's like you go into these series, you score some runs, you have a lead, and then you blow every game. Ridiculous. It's what more
Yeah,
could you say?
Mets season's over. The season got late early. Yeah, pretty much today is June 9th, and the season's definitely over. And I mean, sure they'll be alive, but they ain't going far. And Anthony Finkel says visiting girlfriend's family and looking for rentals. Well, let me see. You're in New York. You work in Brooklyn. Knowing the commute, what's it at? An hour and a half commute? I mean, are you renting it out to somebody? That makes sense, I guess. But certainly I'll come back to that. But I mean, yeah, I mean, so what does this Mets team do? I mean, you really can't say make a trade, make a move. I mean, is somebody going to pay for this? I mean, at this point, people have been, getting knocked about these fire buck hashtags on Twitter, and people have been mentioning it. But I mean, the way this team is kind of sputtered early, I mean, somebody's going to pay for this.
Yeah, well, all the money that Steve Cohen has spent, he's got to be fuming, and it's just going to be a matter of time before somebody pays for it, like you said. But is it going to be Buck? I mean, is it too early for that? I mean, the season is going. It's going downhill fast. They're they're not fun to watch on Twitter, and people are just saying how they're not watching the games anymore, or they're
I got to be
shutting them off.
honest. And the Brute Force Brad Weiss is here for a few minutes. I mean, I really didn't watch the game. I'll be honest. Like, I was watching wrestling. I was looking at the NBA finals. Like, I'm not going to watch a team that they're not any good. I mean, why am I going to watch a team that they get swept and were anemic against the Blue Jays? The Braves, they blew every game. And the Pirates, okay, they played better this year, no question. They've been much more competitive, and they're in a race in the NL Central. But, I mean, you can't play the way they did, down 14-2. That score was totally misleading. So I think a lot of people are going to tune this team out because, at least you had Alonso, okay, 50, 60 home run pace, but who on this team you really want to pay the big bucks for? I mean, this team right now, unfortunately, I hate to say it, they could be, all-time, not all-time worst Met teams, but comparable to teams that were spent a lot of money on, the 2003 teams, 2004 teams, certainly some teams in the 90s that you can go up and down the list, where this Mets team, unfortunately, the way they're going is probably into that territory.
Yeah, it's like the teams that had Bonilla and Coleman, and that's what it's feeling like. And you know what? I don't blame people. I had the game on my phone while I was watching something else, because I mean, what am I going to do? Just keep watching them blow the lead? So I have the game on my phone, so I glance at it, but there's other stuff to do. It's just
I mean, listen. People are this is going to be a long summer for the Mets, and it's going to be a lot of empty seats here. Let me get to some comments from some of these guys. Mets season's definitely over. Haven't watched them all week. I'd rather watch New York's best team right now playing, the New York Liberty, for the Brute Force that I saw a couple weeks ago with Anthony Finkel and his birthday. Another big win tonight. Yeah, definitely some games. Here's the Liberty return to action. Obviously, Wednesday's game was postponed by Armageddon, but obviously they'll resume back, and I'm sure we'll be back there in Brooklyn next month. And Anthony Finkel gives a big Brute chant in the Braves last night. Wow, that Anthony Finkel photo, by the way, on your YouTube page, that's a photo from like ages ago. That's from was that the days you were in Jesse Hamilton's office, or am I getting that maybe mixed up with the FTC? So, and the Brute Force would like to say the Braves are good, but they only scratched out 3 runs versus the Nationals pitching. Well, that's typical because the Mets were playing the Braves. So the Braves kind of went into their beast mode, and they go against the Nationals, and they didn't have to turn the Jets on here. So obviously with this Mets team, it's going to be a long season. And obviously looking at this lineup without Alonso, I mean, who's there really? I guess Lindor has been a big topic on Twitter. You got Alvarez, but I was listening to this on the radio earlier yesterday morning on ESPN with Rick DiPietro, another guy, speaking of Bobby Bonilla, that's got a contract that, guys get a lot of money for to do nothing, and Dave Rothenberg, and they were talking about the fact that who on this Mets team gives you anything with Alonso out? I mean, Lindor is probably not going to get those RBI chances. You got Alvarez, and then it drops off pretty much. So this Mets team, I mean, they could drop even further for all we know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, unless they turn something around. And like we said, Alonso's going to be out for a month. You know what? You know what's more interesting than watching the Mets? Trying to figure out where Anthony Finkel is. Every week he's somewhere different.
Well, obviously he does well in his life. He's obviously, he's raking in the big bucks. That's why, you can go to places like Florida, go to places like Connecticut, Virginia. You can only dream, right? Those of us here living in New York, living on sardines on top of each other, and living for the next day, worrying if we're going to be having to put mask on again, and worrying if we can walk outside again here. But good point here by the Brute Force, which, I mean, they were talking about this on the radio yesterday about Daniel Vogelbach. I mean, what was he, like 2 for his last 37? And here's a guy, they were rattling off his numbers. I'm trying to think whether it was WFAN or whether it was the 1050 ESPN guys. And, okay, he had 1 season of 30 home runs, had another of 18, but the rest of his career was 6 home runs, 4 home runs, 9 home runs, 6 home runs. And here's a guy with a higher on-base percentage than a slugging percentage. So is the reason that he's on this team is because the general manager doesn't want to admit he made a bad move, and is just going to play this guy out till really there's no return in a case like this with the manager, who now probably is going to start hearing the footsteps in a guy in Buck Showalter, who, if you look at his track record, he doesn't stay long on teams either. I mean, Baltimore, he had, okay, a long stay, relatively speaking, but the rest of his career, this is a guy that he doesn't stay long on teams. So does it really come down to the reason we're seeing Vogel back in the lineup and playing is because the general manager is the guy that brought him in and doesn't want to admit it's a bad move, is going to play him till there's no return?
I know it's ridiculous. It's like Darren Ruff, but at least they finally got rid of Ruff. Vogelbach, I don't know what he's doing. Every time he gets up, I mean, the guy walks sometimes, but he's just not hitting. Bring some kids up. This experiment is done as far as I'm concerned. I've had enough of seeing that guy get up and do nothing.
Well, I guess we'll have to figure out the options here. And Anthony Finkel says, love you guys. Appreciate that, Anthony Finkel. Hope you enjoy yourself out there. And I have to actually ask, in Connecticut, did they have the smoke that we saw in most of the Northeast area? I'd be curious if that's the case. But Connecticut always had better weather. So, I mean, then this Mets team, I mean, they're not watchable. We established there's no help on the way. The manager's probably going to hear the footsteps throughout the summer. So if you're a Steve Cohen right now, I mean, what are you thinking?
Oh, I'm pretty pissed right now if I'm Steve Cohen. I mean, what's going on with this team? What happened between last year and this year? At least last year when the Mets were out of it, you knew that they could come back.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the two things looking at this team, and they were trying to parcel this on the radio yesterday, which I thought was a good point. One of the points that has been spoken about on Sportzwire when we used to be on Facebook before Facebook decided that they were going to play stream interference here. Runners in scoring position, which has been obviously the Achilles heel of this team when this team has struggled over the 4.5 years we've been doing this on Sportswire. That's number one. But also number two, if you look at these guys, the back of their baseball cards, none of them are really performing. I mean, Alonso's got the home runs and RBIs, but the batting average is low. Lindor is basically barely above the Mendoza line. Okay, Marte's got the stolen bases, but even guys like McNeil haven't quite had the years that they've had. Vogelbach speaks for itself. You got nothing out of catcher until Alvarez recently. I mean, you go up and down the lineup for this team, these guys really haven't performed. So I think what it comes down to is those are probably some of the explanations.
Yeah, they're definitely underperforming. Nimmo's been all right. I mean,
Nimmo got off to a great start, struggled for a bit, and then has come back up a little bit. Defensively, he's good. I mean, he's kind of where he is, but he's been streaky.
Yeah, but and McNeil, he's a different player right now. I don't know what's going on with him. When last year when McNeil got up, you knew he was going to get a hit. Now, he's cooled down a lot.
The whole team. I mean, listen, again, you look at this whole team, especially now with Alonso out of the lineup. I mean, where does this team go from here? Anthony Finkel says, yeah, they got hit with the smoke as well, being Connecticut. Felt so weird. Reminded me of 9/11. Yeah, I mean, it actually felt a little bit like that, but I'll even say it felt in a way worse than that. I mean, I don't want to get into conspiracies. There's always somebody out there that may say, oh, you heard this, but I was talking to somebody today and they were talking about chemicals that were being thrown in the air and this was all done for different reasons. I don't know. I don't know what goes on, what people think. But yeah, definitely had an eerie feeling. Today, I don't think was as bad, but certainly, Tuesday, Wednesday, even into Monday, I was in not too far from you, Anthony Finkel. Monday night, I was on West 2nd Street, I want to say right off Quinton Road. And I started to feel a little bit in my throat. And then Tuesday, I was out a little further away from you, out like Avenue S, High Lawn Avenue out there. And it felt definitely, you could feel it like, all right, now there's something in the air. But, obviously we'll see. And the Yankees looks like they've kind of hit a little bit of a wall. They got some bad news in their own right now. Yeah. We've got 2 New York sluggers out this week. Aaron Judge, a guy already missed time. Who, look, he was on pace for another big 50-plus home run season. He's out. So now what does this Yankee team do? Because this Yankee team has really not been full strength the whole year. I mean, so what does the Yankees now do with the fact that they now are without Aaron Judge for a little while?
Yeah, now the Yankees are, once again, Judge just came back. He was, starting to hit again. and now he's injured, that toe problem. So what's going to happen with the Yankees? And now the Rays are starting to win again. I think they won
Yep.
seven. They won 7 in a
46
row.
and 19 going into today. Yep, they've definitely.
Yeah, so they just won 7 in a row. The Yankees lost to the Red Sox 3-2. So what the Yankees have to do, the Yankees have to win series, and they better not, lose the series against the Red Sox this weekend.
Oh, especially, and then the Yankees play the Mets. So I mean, obviously, you've got that here, and the brute force Brad Weiss, who I want people to follow on Instagram at bwise20, Brad Weiss20, Anthony J Finkel. Follow him as well out there on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Also, DPH Property Maintenance. I'm sure he's got a big job to speak with, anyways, but still give him on all those platforms a follow. Yeah, Leon Hunter Nagosic. Although Nagosic got DFA'd, so Nagosic very well could be out of the organization. Drew Smith for a team with a big payroll. This is what we have to show in the bullpen, straight up garbage. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say somebody made the point, well, Diaz was out. Maybe that started it. But yeah, I mean, you relied on guys. I mean, listen, we love Steven Nagosic here on Sportswire, but I mean, they were trotting him out there like every day. I mean, some of these guys here, we brought in Leon, a month ago. He was supposed to be a savior for the bullpen, but unfortunately, Ottavino, Robertson, all these different guys, you bring them in, and that's where the team is falling apart. I mean, listen, you go up and down the lineup with this team. Bullpen's been obviously atrocious, and this weekend series definitely played out. Even the Sunday game where the Mets work their way up, tie the game, and you kind of feel like, all right, the Mets win this game. At least you take one of the three. You have a little bit of momentum, and that's kind of where the rails really fell off the station, I think, was Sunday's game, because that's where you kind of like, oh, okay, you got swept to a Blue Jays team, not really playing so well, and then you come back and the bullpen pitches the way they did this past week, certainly. I mean, that's kind of where the wheels fell off. But I mean, again, with this Mets team, I mean, unfortunately, it's everybody across the board. I mean, there's nobody that is really having an above season in their careers. I mean, look at Verlander, look at Scherzer. I mean, obviously the back end of the rotation, for what that's worth. We talked about the lineup, talked about the bullpen. So, there's really nobody on this team is performing, and that's kind of why they are where they are right now and really starting to free fall pretty much.
Yeah, definitely. And, like Brute just said, the bullpen, I mean, it's ridiculous. Now there's talk that the Mets are thinking about going after Diaz's brother if Cincinnati will make a trade. So that's the latest that I heard. But still, he's not his brother, so it's that I knew it was going to be a big loss. I knew when he got hurt celebrating in the WBC, I just knew that it was going to.
Well, I mean, look, I don't know what a trade. I mean, look, a wild card, obviously the Mets is still alive with that, but going into today's play, you were 8.5 games out of first place. You're now 4th place in the division. I mean, you look even the wild card standings. Okay, the Mets were 3 back going into today, so it's obviously season's not over. But you do feel like, in a way, that the white flag is pretty much you're almost there at this point. This team is clearly not going anywhere, and the schedule, I mean, doesn't really get that much easier. You've got games coming up with the Astros, Cardinals. Okay, the Mets can win that, but I mean, the Mets even haven't played well against teams they should beat here. And the brute force says Sunday they were winning by 3 to 4 runs 3 times. I think you're talking about yesterday's game. The Mets were up by a bunch of runs, and Tuesday's game, because Tuesday's game was the game they played in Atlanta where there was an hour and a half delay because of the thunderstorms. Sunday's game they were down, I think, 4 runs and actually tied the game and lost it. The Toronto hit a 2-run homer, I think, in the 8th inning. That's what you're referring to. So I think you're referring to the Braves series. But I don't know. Listen, this Mets team, unfortunately, they're certainly going to have some holes to fill, and the schedule is what it is. And Brad Weiss here says, yes, correct, Tom. So, I mean, I don't really think there's that much more to say.
No.
On this Mets team. I mean, just basically where they are. I mean, they do have a lot of home games. If you're looking for a bright spot, they have an unusual amount of home games coming up the rest of the way. But, again, there's nobody. I just went through this roster up and down. There's really nobody that's having kind of even an average season at best, with the exception of Alonso. Alonso would
Yeah.
have probably been on, a 50 home run pace. The average is certainly low, 230-ish, but you would have still had like those numbers that you were kind of expecting. And so sure, Lindor has the RBIs, but I think those obviously are going to come back to earth a little bit. And going into today's play, Tampa Bay was 46-19, Orioles 38-24, Yankees 37-27, now 37-28, Blue Jays 36-28, Red Sox now at 500. And other scores here of note on Sportswire Radio. I'll also bring up an NBA Finals score. And if the Brute Force, you want to give me a thought or two in the NBA Finals, I'll be happy to address that before we move on. Padres 9, Rockies 6, bottom of the ninth. Mariners, Angels tied 3-3, bottom of the sixth. Giants 1, Cubs nothing. A's break up the Oakland A's. They get a 5-2 win over the Milwaukee Brewers. 2-1 White Sox over the Marlins. Cardinals 7, Reds 4. Cardinals again get a much needed win. Also Braves 3, Nationals 2. So Braves pick up another game on the Mets. That's 9.5 games. Guardians 10, Astros 9. Potential playoff preview. Twins, those first place Twins at 500 nonetheless. 500 Minnesota Twins now 32-32, 3-2 win over the Blue Jays. And standings here now updated. Rays 47-19, 30-6 at home. Orioles 39-24, keeping up 6.5 back. Yankees now 9.5 back. Blue Jays 10.5. Red Sox 14. Also here, Twins a game and a half up on the Guardians. White Sox 3.5 back. Tigers, who have now lost 7 in a row, are at 4.5 back. Unbelievable. You got in the West, Texas, which we'll get to in a second, 40-22. Astros 5 back. Angels 4 back. Mariners kind of in the same boat as the Mets, 9.5, and those Oakland A's now with 15 wins, marching ever so slowly to see if they can avoid the worst season in Major League Baseball history. And Marlins have played very well, 4.5 back. Phillies getting closer to 500. The Brew Force's beloved Philadelphia Phillies. Pirates and Brewers now tied, and the Reds 5 back. Reds have kind of played a little bit better of late. Cardinals and Cubs both 7 back. Cubs are free falling. Giants 5.5 back, 32-30. Diamondbacks, though, 2.5 ahead of the Dodgers. I think the Diamondbacks have really been the surprise team this year in baseball, along with the Pirates. Padres certainly making the Mets, I guess, feel a little bit easier about biggest disappointments in all of baseball this year. Speaking of pressure on jobs, I'm sure Bud Black is starting to feel that here, and the Rockies have definitely come back to earth. So Liberty won. So, yeah, Brad had mentioned that, and certainly, yes, Liberty will definitely be there for sure in the month of July. This month, I'm a little tapped, unfortunately, with schedule, but definitely I would definitely say in July. But Jacob deGrom, is this the last we're going to see of Jacob deGrom? Tommy John surgery, certainly a tough break. Mets do get, I guess, one break because they didn't sign him. But, obviously deGrom is out. It's going to be for a year. And for a guy that's had injuries already, I mean, where do we go from here with the career of Jacob deGrom?
You definitely don't like to see this. And the best move the Mets made this offseason, it looks like, was not signing deGrom. So at least they did, they didn't sign deGrom. But, you have to feel bad. When deGrom is healthy, he's just amazing. But we knew that this was going to happen. As Met fans, we've been used to this for the past 3-4 years. We just knew this was going to happen, and it happened. And we feel bad. I don't wish anything bad for deGrom. What's going to happen with him? Well, he's not. Let's see when he's going to get back. Realistically, I don't think he's going to be back before next year's All-Star game. That's how I feel. It's a shame, but we knew this was going to happen. Maybe when he comes back, he could go into the bullpen. I don't know. His days as a starter might be over.
Yeah, but I don't know if he's a bullpen guy. I don't think at this point in his career, I mean, it's been talked about in the past. I don't know. I mean, especially for a guy a couple of years ago who I think on record in modern history, I think since Louis Tion had the lowest ERA of anybody with 15 starts or more. And here's a guy, again, that certainly you might have made a case could have been in going to Cooperstown, multiple Cy Youngs, but I mean, if you get him next year, realistically, what do you get from him? 8 starts, 10 starts, at most. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you're Texas, you're stuck with this guy. Even from next year's point, I think at least 4 more years. So you've got this guy, and I mean, I don't know what you say, honestly.
And Texas does not have an insurance policy on him because it was too expensive to pay for the insurance policy for DeGrom. So they're not even insured. At least the Mets got the insurance money. Texas doesn't have a full insurance policy on DeGrom. So, that definitely has to hurt them.
Well, I mean, I'm sure for his bank account, he's definitely happy. But for a Texas team that's done pretty well without him, you figured maybe he could make a World Series push. As crazy as that sounds already for the team, you'd love to have him. So you have to figure out where you go from here. Obviously, will look differently, I guess, on his career for sure. But I would definitely say with him being out at least 12 months, could even be longer. At the very least, his career in going to Cooperstown is not going to happen, but we'll have to see with that. But I mean, Yankees, real quick before I move over to the Mets to some other final thoughts here. So Yankees obviously are in a little bit better state than the Mets, but obviously for the division, they're actually in the same spot. But because of their record and such and where they go from here with scheduling and stuff, they obviously do have a little bit more cushion and certainly could make the playoffs as a wild card. And you've got games coming up here, a couple more with the Red Sox. Obviously, Mets, we spoke about, then the Red Sox again and the Mariners, another equally underachieving team. So what do the Yankees have to do in order for them to get back on track?
Well, what they have to do is like I said, they have to win the next two against the Red Sox, but they're playing Seattle. Seattle's in the same boat as the Mets, and then there's the cure of playing the New York Mets because we know what's probably going to happen in that series already. So right there, that's 6 games. So I think the Yankees will be all right. Judge isn't going to be out for a long, long time. So at least they have that.
The other guy that, he's been the guy that's in his career has had a lot of nagging injuries. And,
yeah,
he's a guy also, you're paying a lot of big bucks for, and you're hoping that, you're already paying Stanton all this money. And obviously that contract speaks for itself. So you certainly hope that you get to see him, especially if you're a Yankee fan. And Yankees certainly have a lot of big games coming up. And I mean, for this Mets team, obviously we spoke the schedule. You've got these games here against Pittsburgh. And also Andrew McCutchen, I believe, is 1 hit shy from 2,000 hits. So obviously that'll be something to watch. Obviously Andrew McCutchen back in Pittsburgh, and the Pirates are actually, very much alive here in the National League Central. And how about Rich Hill tonight? I mean, Rich Hill, this guy's got to be like 400 years old, and he pitched, I think, his longest game of the season, and one of the longest games he's pitched in a long time, 7 innings, 2 runs, and he shuts down this Mets lineup. And Rich Hill, obviously a guy we had here with the Mets.
Yep.
Mets certainly wish that they had him, and Pirates have certainly played well here. And I mean, what do you explain on a Rich Hill before I ask you two thoughts on the Mets? I mean, Rich Hill is a guy that's pitched for like every team. He's 43 years old, still successful. And how do you explain that?
I don't know. He must be on the same diet Jesse Orosco was on because, it's the guy just never gets old and he just pitches.
Yeah, he looks the same. He keeps pitching the same. I mean, just a guy that, again, was a kind of a late bloomer to his career. A couple of different times looked like his career was going to end, but, he certainly is now going to definitely be somebody that's going to be around and pitching for a team that's going to play a lot of meaningful and important baseball here coming up in the Pittsburgh Pirates. Definitely one of the bigger surprises in all of baseball this year.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, look, they made the Mets look pretty bad tonight. And Pittsburgh, they're pretty exciting now. No one figured this was going to happen, and good for the Pittsburgh fans. They deserve some good.
No, it's a franchise. I know they had some success in the early part of the last decade, but for a long time have not had much success since. And at the team, a lot of young players have come in and nicely, and Think about even a guy like Carlos Santana for him has had some big
Yeah.
moments. I know he's been kind of hurt right now, but I mean, you look at different players like, a Rodolfo Castro and certainly Brian Reynolds. Brian Reynolds is a name we spoke about here on Sportswire, and Andrew McCutcheon back there, and he gets a hit today. So it's a team, obviously the names probably don't strike out at you, but they've certainly had some success. And Rich Hill is 6-5 this year, and he's obviously been an anchor for them in that middle of the rotation. Vince Velasquez, you'd hope to get a little bit more from once he returns from injuries. And Mitch Keller has obviously been their number one starter. So, we'll have to see here. And Rich Hill gets his 88th career win. And definitely he's grinded to those 88 wins in his 19th season. But, I mean, so what is this Met team here? What can they do? One or two keys between now and next week. Although I will say there's a possibility we're going to actually be preempted next week because actually we have an announcement before I do anything. IMF, our friends at the IMF Federation, at the Iowa Midwestern Wrestling Federation, actually have a huge show. They have a pay-per-view, which Mr. Brute Force does them very well. It's their big show of the year. It's almost actually kind of a war they're in. We might actually have coverage with them Friday night. So we'll see what day we come back on here, especially with this whole Facebook stream. I'm not sure what the future brings, but we'll definitely figure it out. Maybe we'll be on Friday night. Maybe bring those guys in. We'll have to figure it out. But one or two keys here for this Mets team, regardless, between now and next week.
Score some runs, and that bullpen has got to. These guys gotta do something because it's ridiculous blowing these games, and also Vogie's got to go. They got to do something about that. He's like an automatic out. And, I can't even watch the guy get up anymore. And you know what? And I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt this year. I like the guy, but now he's just terrible. He goes up there and he's going to strike out.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, as Mets fans and watching the Mets team, this is all too often the usual story here that the Mets have these different guys that come in here and they just don't produce. They don't even feel like they try or put anything to the table. And even I think Rick DiPietro of all people made a pretty good point that you look at a guy like Vogelback, and even if he gets on base, he can't run. I mean, the guy can't run, so it's like, okay, yeah, sure, put him on first, but he can't do anything once he gets past that point. So it's almost like, well, what's even the point to have him on base? And that's kind of the sad part. Guys like him are all too often the tail in Mets history. I mean, we're doing this 4.5 years. You can think about a whole list of guys that couldn't do anything for this team. Billy Hamilton couldn't hit for this team. You had guys like John Mayberry Jr. They were hitting the middle of the lineup. I mean, it's just all too often a list of guys that are on this team. James McCann, right? The Mets signed him to all this money. He was an all-star. Comes to the Mets. The guy can't even hit. Jason Bay. I mean, certainly, not that Vogelback is in those territories, but, it's all too often the tail here for the Mets. And that's kind of where this team is, unfortunately. Even guys like Verlander and Scherzer, you're expecting like those Cy Young numbers. And, they haven't been terrible as Mets, certainly, but you just get the feel that, it's not happening. And that's kind of the sad part to, where this team is. It's kind of feels like I said, it's all going all too often. I think where this team is going to end up kind of in the usual spot, despite an owner that has shown a penchant to want to deliver for this team, want to spend the money, and the results seem to continue. It does not seem to vary. So, we'll have to see what happens. But Rob, I want to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts. Obviously, we'll be back on, I guess, YouTube going forward. It is what it is. But anything else you want to plug? I know we have contest updates coming up right next week, maybe, or one of the following.
Yeah, next week.
Update. All right, we'll see where we are.
The Nemo.
All right, we'll definitely talk about that. You'll definitely talk about it. And, I'm going to give you the floor. Anything else you want to plug, share, say, and fire away.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to mention original Met Roger Craig passed away.
Oh, yeah, right, 93.
93.
And manager of the San Francisco Giants, right? Managed them to the World Series, right? 1989, right?
Yeah, they won the pennant that year. Yep. That was
now he's in their I believe he's in their Hall of Fame for the San Francisco Giants, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the earthquake. That was the earthquake.
Yep, Kevin Mitchell, right? Sure, Matt Williams, sure.
Yep.
Couple 87, right? They had some good years there, sure.
Yeah, his record as a manager, believe it or not, was 738 and 737. So he was one game over 500 as a manager.
Well, you know what? I guess you're one game over 500, right? So that's a really interesting because he actually has a better win percentage of all people than Bruce Bochy. So if you think about it, right,
Yeah.
Bruce Bochy won 3 World Series,
Yeah.
and Roger Craig actually has a better win loss percentage than a Bruce Bochy. So what a small world there. Yeah, definitely. What a small stint with the Padres managing them, but
Yeah.
mostly managed the Giants there for 8 years, where he had most of that success. Sure.
And he played on 4 world championship teams also, you gotta remember. So that's not too shabby. Pitched the first game for the Mets. We know what happened in that game, but he was an original Met, and our condolences to his family.
Absolutely. And Anthony Finkel says, when is he going to win a contest? Well, I mean, I guess you have to enter the contest. Which is he?
Yeah.
Is he entering the contest? Is that what is he? Is
No.
that why he's not winning? Oh, well, he's got to enter then. If you're not winning the contest, you got to enter him. So that's what you have to do. So you'll win if you enter. And I think anybody else wants to enter, they can go to R Maraska on Twitter. I guess Rob Maraska on Facebook. I mean, it's interesting because I'm on Facebook. I can actually post on Facebook like a photo. But if I do anything stream related, even if I do a post, like if I share the YouTube link, it doesn't. I don't think people see it. So I mean, I'll share this on Facebook shortly, but I don't even know if people will see it. So we'll try that, see what happens. But obviously it is what it is. So for the foreseeable future, this is what you're going to get. And I was speaking to somebody, and they were actually temporarily blocked for like 3 months. Somebody else said they weren't, able to come back at all. So we'll have to see. But Rob, obviously, good stuff. We'll definitely play some of these clips on Twitter at the very least, so we'll get something out of that. And we'll see what happens with Buck Showalter and the rest of this Mets team, and Jacob deGrom, whose career could be unfortunately hitting a significant crossroads and more. But if you are on Sportswire Radio on YouTube, I will be back Sunday evening with Wrestling Championship Entertainment coverage with Dash Andrews and also Prince Charles. The guys will get us ready for Ring of Destruction. There's a big show coming, a number of big shows coming up here at Wrestling Championship Entertainment. The guys are going to talk about that, plus their new alliance and anything else that's on their minds. A big, big time ahead for our friends at Wrestling Championship Entertainment. Please follow them at WC Heat on YouTube. Also, Facebook as well, WCHeat.com, Wrestling Championship Entertainment. Please go out and support them, and certainly have more coverage ahead later in the week, also with the resident rock star Sean Jovi and Nicholas Crenton, now the Psycho Wolf. They had yet another big match. Very excited about that. See the aftermath of that. And also Friday night, we'll be back with the IMF guys. Stay tuned for a proper announcement for times. Maybe we'll squeeze in a quick Sports Wire show, but that's where we are from now. But Rob, good stuff. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. If you're on sportnarium.com/player, you go back to your regularly scheduled programming in a little while. If you're on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. If you're on Twitter, thanks for tuning in on the number one global radio station that is Sports Wire Radio.